Welcome to a special Super Bowl edition of the New Orleans Saints podcast. Erin Summers and Gus Kattengell are making the rounds on Radio Row. Hear from current and former players, newsmakers, and a few surprises along the way. The New Orleans Saints podcast starts right now. Here are your hosts, Erin Summers and Gus Kattengell.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special Super Bowl edition of the New Orleans Saints podcast. Miss Erin Summers, you host the New Orleans Saints podcast throughout the year. It is Super Bowl 59. First off, can you believe? Here it is, the big game in the Crescent City.
I feel like we've been talking about this for so long, and for it to actually be here is wild. I'm really excited. It's going to be a fun week. There's going to be so much going on in this city, and it doesn't have to do anything with football if you don't want it to.
That is very true.
I just got a thing saying that we can go taste king cake somewhere. So there is a lot of different events going on all over the French Quarter, downtown New Orleans, here at the Convention Center where we are at for Radio Row. There's the NFL Experience that kicks off soon, and that's a fun event for kids that can come to.
Oh, yeah. There's
going to be games there. You're going to run into players all over the place. There's just a lot going on.
And I legit don't know if I've been asked more about, if someone can carry my bags to the Super Bowl or something. I don't have a Super Bowl ticket, so I can't help anybody.
It's funny. Most of the people that I'm talking to here, they're like, yeah, I'm staying until Friday.
Yeah.
Like all the media that's here,
Exactly.
because most of them, you come here because we look around, so many different entities that are here covering it. There's so many people here to be able to talk to, but a lot of people aren't covering the game itself.
Yeah, it's interesting because the point I was bringing up is I think more people have asked me about Post Malone tickets.
Yeah.
And all the different concerts and different aspects you're saying, to your point. So there's stuff from kids, adults, and everything all the way around. I guess what we can do here as well, because we're going to be here all week, so I'm excited about that. And I'm sure we're going to run into some players that wear the black and gold, some players of yesteryear and in today here as well. Just the setups, we can take people, I guess, an audio visual tour of what this place is sort of like. Some of the things that stood out to me, obviously, you have the big networks, you have satellite radio, you have all those setups. The amount of international presence is unbelievable. Just behind us over here, Rey Mysterio, a famous wrestler, and obviously they're doing it. But when you look at the international contingency, I mean, they didn't just come with the table. I mean, there's setups here. I mean, the NFL is absolutely a global game. I know we think about that when it comes to the NBA, but are you surprised by how much of a global game the NFL is? Probably not, huh?
No, I mean, when you win, you are called a world champion, are you not?
That is very true.
So this is something that definitely transcends outside of the United States. We have international games now. We'll have more international games next year. It's a worldwide event, I think. And the NFL season culminates at the Super Bowl, and this year here in New Orleans.
I think it's one of the other aspects that kind of stands out to me, too, is just how it's being covered, right? It's you would think, like, when you think of Super Bowl Radio, Media Row, it's breakdowns of the games. It's, how teams got here, how individual teams sort of do. But I almost feel like it's more about either storytelling or just different aspects of the game. Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah. I think for a lot of people like ourselves, unfortunately the Saints not playing in the game,
right,
but there are definitely people that we're going to be talking to all week that can give us insight into different areas of the NFL or the game or the upcoming draft, players that we should be looking out for. So there's lots of different avenues that you can take this week. There's local radio shows from, cities that aren't affiliated with Kansas City or Philadelphia that are here because this is the place to be.
Yeah.
You want to be around it. Yeah. Whether or not your show has anything to do with the Chiefs or the Eagles, there are people. This is what people are talking about this week. Yeah, so you want to be here.
We saw Tommy Tucker from earlier this morning from WWL's morning show. He's not talking sports. He is. But the point is, they got a nice setup over there in the kind of faux quarter.
I know, he has snacks, like a whole setup.
Snacks. He has
and
everything.
I really, this whole, is this Bounty, the quicker picker-upper towels?
It's so funny. You
towels?
say that, I look at it like that's in that Drew Brees' house or something.
It is a
Brownie?
two-story
it is.
facility
Football
that they have
toss.
set up.
There's a football toss. as well. I noticed that too. There's another setup behind us as well. It kind of looks like a soccer goal that they've outfitted into football toss. Apparently, that's the thing. We need to have something.
We need a gimmick.
Yes, we need something where our guests will then throw a football through something, eat a hot wing, or something.
Where is King Cake Baby when you need him?
That's it.
The Pelicans are out of town. Can we steal him for the week?
That is true. You know what? Let's see if we can make that happen or not. But look, I'm looking forward to
people would be.
It would. Well, it would definitely attract attention, for sure. What are some of the things I guess you're excited about when it comes to this game? Just to begin with, though, there's storylines everywhere.
The thing is the Eagles, and had it not been for a couple injuries, maybe Eric McCoy getting hurt in the third play of the Saints game against the Eagles, we could have beat them. We could have derailed their entire season.
One win, one loss.
I'm
exactly. Well, no, but
no, but this Eagles squad is absolutely stacked.
Yeah.
They're so talented. And what's wild is they have the second best run game in the NFL, and they're one of the worst passing games. But they don't need to pass.
Right.
Because they have somebody named Saquon Barkley who has over 2,000 yards on the ground this season. They're averaging 179 yards on the ground as a team. And they know how to run the ball. And that's where it starts in the NFL. If you can establish a run game, then you're going to be successful.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that stands out to me is when I look at the Chiefs, and one of our guests we're going to speak to today, Lindsay Rhodes, is going to talk a little bit about this. When you look at statistically, not only or analytically comparing different rosters between the Eagles and the Chiefs, it's true, though. I mean, we all know about Kelsey, and we all know about Pat. They have a good team, though, right? Don't they? And I feel like the last time they were in the Super Bowl when they faced the Eagles, I thought that was the year where, man, the offensive line was really kind of banged up, and the receiving core, I think, was really hurt even last year here as well. When you look at KC, what stands out to you? Because they didn't lose very many games this year.
I think for KC, it starts with their coaching staff. Andy Reid is very good. Steve Spagnuolo is insane when it comes to a defensive coordinator, and the way that they can just literally out-coach you within the game, leading up to the game. You can't ever really count them out. And then obviously Patrick Mahomes. He's another player that just makes stuff happen. And I go back to a couple weeks before the end of the regular season, and it looked like he was going to be out for a while. He had that. Everybody's freaking out because he had the ankle injury and he could be done. And then all of a sudden he pops back and he's like fine the next week. But that would absolutely decimate that team if he was unable to play. So I think a lot of it comes down to Patrick Mahomes just does Patrick Mahomes things, and people cannot compete with that.
And there's a thing right now, too, and I know you chuckled when we were speaking with Lindsay, too, about the whole referees and all this other stuff. You know what that's called? What it's called is teams legitimately think that there's a way in that fourth quarter that the Chiefs are going to win. And what's crazy about that is that's not by accident. That team the whole team has that, clutch gene, whatever you want to call it. They just know how to find a way to win.
They've been there so many times.
100%. They have a belief.
Right.
And it's gotten to the point now where they make the other team believe that they're almost
I'm sure
superhuman,
the other
right?
team
It's like,
starts playing
here it
tight.
comes. Exactly right. Here they come. Or we score a touchdown. Still 2 minutes left, where you probably wouldn't feel that other team. And that's so hard to build up, Erin. But they've won 2 straight Super Bowls for a reason. That's crazy. I almost feel like I've heard it this week, and I've heard it leading into it, but maybe not nearly as much as it is. They have a shot to win 3 straight. It's never happened. You know how hard it is here. We for sure would have thought the Saints would have been in more than one, much less win in one.
Yeah.
They have a shot to win 3
Speaking
straight.
of the refs.
And the AFC. Speaking of the refs. But you know what I'm saying? Like, when you think of the AFC, the teams, the quarterbacks, all the different scenarios and, paths and avenues they have to get through. And they have a shot to win 3 straight. That's crazy.
I mean, we're going to see history on Sunday one way or another.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to happen, or it is going to happen. The Eagles are going to get theirs. Who knows? But I think we're in for a very, very good game. I don't know if we're going to get overtime like we did last year, but, it's going to be good.
We'll see what happens. So we've talked about some gimmicks here. We've seen some football toss. I don't see like a field goal kicking situation, though, anywhere around here.
Well, we did actually talk to Blake Grupe today.
That's where I was going.
And he was giving us some tips. And actually, told us about some people who've reached out to him for tips in the Superdome.
It wouldn't be a bad thing, that is for sure. And then, of course, we'll speak with Lindsay Rhodes.
Yes, Lindsay Rhodes. She's awesome. She spent a long time working for the NFL Network. She is very knowledgeable when it comes to the NFL itself, and now she's working for SumerSports, which is a data analytics organization. They've been around for about 3 years now, and she really dived into some really cool numbers and some things that you don't really think about surface level when you're just watching the game.
Yeah. I know she said one thing that totally blew me away.
Yeah.
The most inaccurate passer is actually the best decision maker.
Right.
I'll let you listen to the interview to find out who that quarterback is, but it was surprising to hear that, right?
Yeah, good combos to kick off the week.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, here's our conversation with Lindsay Rhodes and Saints kicker Blake Grupe.
We are here with Lindsay Rhodes. She is with SumerSports. She's been all over the sports world for several years. I'm not going to go back and say
Which is
how
another way of saying I'm so old, and I'm starting to feel like it these days.
No, not at all. But you've done a little bit of everything, every sport. How exciting is it to be at an event like this?
Yeah, Super Bowls never get old. It really is one of those things. I mean, the best thing about working in sports media, period, is always just the proximity to, like, we get to work in the candy store of life, right? Like, this is all the fun stuff. And so even though it inevitably always starts to feel like work, no matter what you do, you come to something like Super Bowl, and there's no way to not feel like this is so special. And we're all so lucky to get a chance to be in places like this, having conversations like this.
How does what you're doing this week vary from maybe Super Bowls in the past?
It's very different in the sense that every Super Bowl I've ever been to, I was with NFL Network.
Yeah.
And so the experience just of going with a TV show is so different because you have 1 hour a day and you're specifically preparing for 1 hour a day. It's like very specific content on a day-to-day basis. Now with SumerSports, we're doing a ton of shows like this where, you know, I'm coming on and talking to people like you, and also then doing our own content, and it's kind of all of the different directions that it might possibly go in, right? It's a lot less structured, and so it's really fun in that sense for me because we get a chance to talk about so many different topics, as opposed to just focusing on, you know, working for NFL Network for so many years. It was like all of the different layers of the game. By the end of the week, you're like, oh my God, how many times can we talk about Patrick Mahomes' legacy, or in those cases, Tom Brady's legacy, and all of the different layers of the game, you kind of find yourself talked out. I feel like in this type of environment, and you're my first interview too, so we're kicking this week off together. It's like all of the different directions. We could talk Saints, we could talk about the different game angles, and, you know, whatever news is out there, Senior Bowl, and so I think that that's really fun too.
Yeah, I mean, recently you come from Mobile pretty recently, and we're there covering the Senior Bowl and seeing all these prospects coming up. And I know this is the accumulation of this season with the Super Bowl on Sunday, but we're already getting ready for next year.
Yep,
and then there is a lot of stuff that we can definitely talk about.
I think one of the things that's interesting too, as you guys were just talking about Super Bowls, they never get old. They do change though, huh?
Yeah.
And from the last time they were here, and obviously this is the 11th Super Bowl for New Orleans, but just the technology. Now when you look at radio stations or video television stations, you don't need a television network to broadcast your show, right? And just how medium has changed, and just when you make the walk around here, that's the biggest things that's changed for me from when we last saw the Ravens take on the 49ers here.
Well, media in general has changed so dramatically in such a short period of time, right? I mean, in the last 10 years, I'd say, but specifically 5 years, it's moving more and more away from media where there are gatekeepers, kind of, and to a much more democratized space. But then also that comes with challenges, because I think if you're a fan and you're searching for information, it's much harder to know who has access, who is just an opinion.
Reliable, trustworthy.
Well, I mean, you know, not all opinions are the same based on proximity to information, based on actual boots on the ground. I've put eyes on this situation. I have experience. There's some vetting that doesn't exist in today's media space to the degree that it used to. So it's kind of pros and cons, I think. It's much harder to figure out, like if you're just searching through Twitter and you're like, hey, I want to know more about plug in the name into the search engine. Is the tweet that I found actually a reliable one? Is that stat a good stat? Is it true? And so I find myself having to like self-check all of these things that honestly, if I'm telling the truth, that I mean, the number of years that I worked for NFL Network and I would read a news story and then I would do the click through.
Yeah.
The headline is, "This is what happened." And you're like, that doesn't sound right. And so you click on the link to the article that it's referencing and then click on the link to the interview video that they're showing. And you're like, that's not what they said.
Right.
So it's always really been true in terms of media literacy, but it's definitely got more complicated.
I mean, I appreciate it because I can win any argument and I'm always right because I can find it. I can find somebody out there that has said it. But going back to being at the Senior Bowl, and they like to say that that's where the draft starts. And there were a ton of really impressive prospects. But from your time there, talking to maybe some scouts, seeing the players out there, who pops for you?
So in general, the groups that are good this year, and this was true at Senior Bowl also, the edge group is really, really good, which is good for a lot of teams because that's a high positional value. Like everybody is looking for an edge rusher. And so I think teams kind of up and down the first round will probably be able to find them this year. The cut line for Senior Bowl invites this year at that position was a 4th round grade, which is kind of wild. If you think about in years past, like there were 110 players from last year's Senior Bowl game that got drafted. So there's a lot of talent there, but usually it's very spread out over all of the rounds. And some positions you're looking at people that might get drafted in the 7th round, right? The 6th round, later on day 3. So to have the entire group be 4th round or above probably is a good sign for that position group. Tight ends also this year. And I think that that's a really interesting position because we've seen in the last couple of years, I think it was last year in particular, you kind of look at like the final 8 every year in the playoffs and say like, okay, what are the themes here from a roster building standpoint? What got these teams to the finish line that we can maybe take a look at and copy? And I feel like teams with an elite tight end have had a lot of success in the last few years. It's not true completely across the board, but if you can get one, man, does that open up a whole lot of things in your offense. And this is a good class for that for sure.
If you look at the Saints, then you can circle Taysom Hill, and if he wants to qualify as a tight end, sometimes quarterback, running back, who knows? But when he was healthy, yes, that definitely makes us a much better team, and that was the name of the game for the Saints this season, was just battling a lot of injuries. So it's going to be interesting to see who the Saints go after, dependent on maybe who the next head coach is, his philosophy, what he likes. It's going to definitely play into the draft process for us. So we're kind of sitting here waiting.
Well, and also, what do they do in free agency? And I think the big question every year for everybody on the outside is this the year that they take their cap medicine and get compliant? Because you look at that cap number every single year and you're like, oh my God, $54 million in the red. Like, how are we going to get out of that? And so that usually means restructured contracts and things of that nature to get back to zero. It usually in the Saints history has not meant blowing it up and actually doing a full rebuild. I kind of think, and I'm sure that they probably won't do it, but I sort of think that this might be a good year to go in that direction because there is a lot of draft capital and there is also, you're coming off a season where there's a lot of room for growth, right? Like there's a lot of areas that you could point to even in the draft and say like, where do you want to go? It almost feels like a best available type of situation in a lot of different ways. And so to me, that feels like, when you have aging players that have been cornerstones of everything, that maybe there becomes a point in time. Bill Belichick always used to like to get out a year too early than a year too late. Right. So how do you handle some of those types of situations? The edge class, and we all love Cam Jordan, right? So I'm not even suggesting anything here, but I'm saying that there's an opportunity to maybe upgrade the edges, from a so what did they do with regards to some of those contracts before the draft even to start making those moves? And then I think that there are some clues always in terms of free agency strategy that tell us where they might be going in the draft.
I think it's interesting. You were talking about the Senior Bowl and drafting or just being able to evaluate players. And when you bring up the cap situation, I just think of some of the teams in the NFC, because that's obviously at the end of the day, I'm not a GM or anybody's trying to build a team, but I look at the teams that are winning, are here at the Super Bowl, and what did they do? What do I have to do to beat them? The last time I mentioned the Super Bowl was here was the 49ers, kind of their start to kind of make some runs a little bit, right? And now I look at Detroit, I look at Philly. Lindsay, why had they been so successful the last couple of years? And I think of Philly, I think of the draft. They've drafted a lot, right? A lot of beef up
There's
front.
no doubt.
Right? Detroit, kind of the same thing. And talking about San Francisco, they're going to have some cap issues and who to pay and things of that nature. So kind of circles around, doesn't it?
I feel like, yes, and I feel like this year in particular, it's made me, my big roster building takeaway this season, I think, has been, and I go back and forth about this all the time, but I think my takeaway from this year is the importance of the offensive line, which I know feels like football 101, but, you know, sometimes in a draft, you always have the conversation, like back with the Bengals when it was, should we take Penei Sewell or should we take Jamar Chase? And, you know, the whole idea of, you know, well, if you can protect the quarterback, you can throw to anybody. And clearly that turned out to be a very good pick for the Bengals, and Jamar Chase hit. But I think that this year has solidified my opinion that if you really, really just bulk up that offensive line, and then in the case of like teams that have elite quarterbacks, you put an elite quarterback behind an elite offensive line, you can do anything. I mean, look at the way that the Bills are built this year and what they were able to do statistically. I mean, they were popping off the charts in terms of EPA and all the advanced metrics, and yet they had a whole wide receiver room that no one knew and no one wanted to play in fantasy, and Dalton Kincaid didn't even hit, and the running back's good, but not like Saquon Barkley good. Like, so I really feel like that's my primary takeaway, is that if you can just get that offensive line, because over and over and over again, the Ravens, great offensive line, the Lions, great offensive line, the Chiefs actually, weirdly, I think this year, they have a really good interior offensive line, but the tackles haven't been so good. And I think that's led to a lot of the decrease in numbers that make them look like they're a middle of the pack team, and people are like, they're not special. Like, what is it about the Chiefs that are special? And it makes it much harder to evaluate them, because they're special in ways that have more to do with like situation management, game management. They're really good at, you know, on third down, on getting into short third downs, just in terms of like moving the chains. I think that the coaching staff has just really, really, like, you can't understate what they've done to the Chiefs this year. But going back to the offensive line, I think that is my primary takeaway from the season in terms of roster building. There are so many things you can do if you just prioritize that. Yeah.
I mean, the Chiefs are one of those teams that one-score games, they're theirs. Right. They're going to win them no matter what. And you're like, to your point, they don't flash that often. They're not crazy putting up a ton of points, but Patrick Mahomes does Patrick Mahomes things, and Andy Reid is a very good coach. I would say that Jaden Daniels would agree with you, though, on the offensive line situation, because, man, he is special. But our game here against them, he got sacked 8 times.
Yeah.
So that's definitely something they got to figure out.
So let me ask you something, because here in New Orleans, we got a little spoiled. You might have heard of him, Deuce McAllister.
Yeah.
And somehow a couple years later we get Alvin Kamara.
I know.
And you just brought his
name up. And by the way, he
too.
Keeps, like, it's just like, how old are we going to be and still be good? Like, what is it with some of these guys right now? Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's fine, because you brought up Saquon Barkley. Are we seeing a resurgence of running back, or is it more, because to your point, I'm not needing to depend nearly as much on quarterback, and I wonder how much of that is the cap, right? Because quarterbacks' contracts are 40, 50, 60 million. I'm almost wondering if eventually teams are going to rethink of how they do that. If you have that franchise quarterback, it is what it is. Or if you can find an offensive line, can we just get a guy, hey, just convert a pass? I'm not saying Brock Purdy's that, but you get what I'm getting at in terms of how to build, and the importance of when you get a rookie QB, let's build around him, and just like Jaden Daniels, can you just make some plays, but we got some guys around you. But do you see running back kind of being a little bit more important? Because there's a guy coming in the draft this year that I'm just going to tell you some Saints fans constantly are looking at.
Are we looking at anyone from Boise State? Is that?
Or no, he's just kind of a maybe.
I don't know. What in what level? Because there's a couple different ways we could take that Boise State alum.
That's true. That's true. So here's what I would say about the running back resurgence, first of all. And I think that this is a fascinating conversation that I'm glad you brought up. I feel like what happened this year is the elite running backs ended up on outstanding teams with outstanding offensive lines.
Good point.
I think that's the explanation for what we saw from the running backs this year. Where were these guys last year? Saquon Barkley was on the Giants. If he was on the Giants this year, and I know Joe Shane gets so much crap for trading him away, I think it was the right decision. I think it was the right decision to let him go, because I don't think that what we saw from Saquon Barkley this year we would have even seen remotely if he was on the Giants in that offense with Daniel Jones standing in the backfield and behind that offensive line. Not even at all. We didn't see it last year. We didn't see it last year to the degree where it was like, I don't know, man. Like, is he still that good? Has he lost a step? Like, this year we're clearly seeing the answer to that is no. But I think we would still be wondering that if he was back there. And by the way, Tyrone Tracy was great. Like, from an advanced metric standpoint, all of this stuff, Tyrone Tracy was outstanding this year for the Giants. So it's not like they didn't have solid running back play, and they got that solid running back play for free practically, comparatively speaking. So I think Derrick Henry going to the Ravens, now that's why you're seeing Derrick Henry be insane and like topping out our expectations there. Josh Jacobs was on the Raiders last year, and they were struggling terribly to the degree where I was like, I don't know, is he good anymore? Because with running backs, you're always looking for the running back cliff. When they fall off so fast. And last year there was, I think, good reason to wonder with all of these guys, are they still the same? Because there's no running back also, and I work for a data and scouting company, so I'm deep in the numbers. The one thing I think we have yet to really put our finger on as a data community is how to evaluate running back play. There are no metrics where you can pull the running back out of the offense and the environment that he's in and then say, oh, he's still good. He's just on a bad offense behind a bad offensive line. There's no way to identify that. So that's one thing just in terms of the future of data and scouting that I think we kind of need to get better at. But to the running back resurgence question, I think that the answer is no. Does that mean that teams will agree with me and not start overpaying for running backs? Probably not. There are some that probably will be like, there you go, let's go get our Saquon Barkley. And I think that they will not have the degree of success that they're seeing these guys have. I think it makes sense to pay a running back if you have an elite offense and an elite offensive line. Otherwise, I would not go in that direction at all.
You mentioned the fact that you're into analytics, the data. What is something that surprised you this year? I mean, you talked a little bit about the offensive line being really important, but maybe something you came across this season that you're like, I didn't expect that, and that's really interesting.
Ooh. I don't have a specific answer, I think, that I can give you. I think there are a few things that have really become apparent to me over the years where I find myself having conversations now that I have to remind myself that this is how a lot of people have conversations, because I'm in such a space where I'm looking through the prism of a lot of these advanced metrics, and some things are super clear to me. And then you go out and you have conversations like about the Jets and Aaron Rodgers, and should they keep him? And then you hear people say things like, yeah, but he passed for so many yards. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't. Right. Of course, passing yards is how a lot of people look at this. But I've gone so far away from any of those traditional box score stats. And the one thing that I would tell people is, if you're still just looking at a box score to evaluate play, this is true for everything. Context, right? Yeah. And that's why the advanced numbers that people are like, nerds are ruining the game. That's why they exist. They're existing to try and provide more context, because the box score stats don't tell it. If you can be the leading passer in the league, and the reason that you are that, and this is absolutely the story with Aaron Rodgers, is because you're down all the time, because you never are winning.
Right.
And we all know that the game script requires you to throw the ball in that case. It's not like, oh, we're up and we just like throwing, which, by the way, is the case with Patrick Mahomes. He's thrown more passes this year than any other quarterback in the league when leading, which is fascinating to me. And he's thrown the third most passes for a quarterback on a team that went 15-2 in the regular season. I think that's a wild stat. But anyway, the case is, like, a lot of the box score stats just don't tell the story. You have to dive into, well, how many attempts did he have in Aaron Rodgers' case? How many yards per attempt did he have in Aaron Rodgers' case? And then you get to some numbers that are not so good. In our advanced metrics at Sumer, which uses tracking data, he ranked 32nd in our passing all-in-one metric.
Wow.
Which takes into account decision-making, accuracy, timing, all of those things that are harder to evaluate just with numbers. You sort of need the tracking data so that you know, like where the defender was and the speed at which he was coming and how the person read the field. And did he get the ball to the person who had the chance to pick up the most yards and the highest completion probability, all that kind of stuff. And 32nd, 31st in decision-making, 38th in accuracy. Like, these are all numbers that tell a story of somebody that I don't know why. I don't know why he's not Aaron Rodgers anymore, but it tells a story pretty clearly that it is him. And I know people will be like, but the O-line and but the drops. And these are things that measure him.
Yeah. Right.
Just him. And so I think that that's one of the things in the last few years that I've just found my whole brain flip.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. What quarterback, since you have that kind of pulled up there, that maybe surprised you statistically was? I mean, we followed, obviously, Jaden Daniels' season from LSU, so we kind of looked at that as a rookie to be able to do that. But is there a quarterback where you're like, what? The metrics are telling me this?
You know what I think one of the funniest stories that's come out of this is Anthony Richardson and the story surrounding Anthony Richardson. So Anthony Richardson ranks 38th in our all-in-one metric, which sounds about right? Well, I mean, there's only 32 starters, so that's actually like maybe a little bit lower than you would even think, but like that's about what we see on the field now. He has a long way to go. There's the traits are all there, the tools. Like, he's somebody that you want to give extra chances to develop because he's so special when he's on. And then in the areas that need development, they really need development. He's number one in our decision making.
Really?
Metric, which I think is wild. And I'll tell you what that does and why I think he is number one, but he's second to last in accuracy. So to me, the decision-making thing takes specifically, like, it's got, the dots on the field, right? And so we have the ability to break it down on a frame by frame, not just a one play. It's on every frame. You can literally pause it and say, okay, the pass left the quarterback's hand 32 frames into this play. At that point, you can stop and put your cursor on every single wide receiver on the play, and it'll show you their completion probability. At that moment, 5 frames later, it changes because of the defender's speed, angle, where they are positioned on the field. So what it ranks is whether or not he's maximized the ability to throw the ball at the right time, to maximize the amount of yards that they can get on the play to the receiver who has the best chance to pick those up. And so I think it overweights maybe a little bit quarterbacks that are taking shots downfield, because from an analytics standpoint, from a numbers standpoint, we all know, and this is the run game versus the passing game conversation we've had in the last few years, that you're going to have a greater chance of scoring a touchdown if you pick up yards in chunk plays. So if you are pushing the ball downfield, this is going to maybe a little bit overweight that decision, but it says that he is making the decisions that would move his ball down move his team down the field most quickly at the best rate in the league. I think that that's probably the hardest thing. Like, when I thought he needs to improve, I was like, get him off the field, get him in a film room. He needs, the game goes so fast. Let's slow it down for him. Let's let him see the field. The fact that he is so high in decision making, I think, is interesting, because I think that the accuracy is probably easier to fix. And that might not be true, but spend a whole offseason training that. Like, we know you have the arm, we know you have the tools, so let's work on the accuracy. To me, and maybe I'm totally wrong, that feels much more fixable than somebody for whom it's flipped. Like, the decision making is a disaster, but the accuracy is on point. So
it'll be interesting to see the jump that he makes next year then, if he does work on that in the offseason, and that is what clicks for him. What are you overall looking forward to most about the upcoming season, or a storyline that's really got you excited?
I am excited about, just in general, the entire offseason. I love roster building, which is partially why I think SumerSports in this specific role that I'm in with them is such a good fit, because I'm the person that's super into fantasy because of the ways that all of these dots
Do you win
connect,
every
right?
year? Is that your thing?
I'm in a lot of leagues, okay? So I don't win them all. There are always some that I do. But yeah, I had 16 leagues this year. So the hit rate's not going to be exactly top notch. But I'm really interested to see the ways that teams kind of rebuild themselves this offseason. And now that we have more and more information, you've seen more teams kind of tap out of traditional scouting things, like the Rams, who chose a few years ago to not go to the combine in person and started asking themselves questions about, we've always done this, but should we continue to do the things we've always done, and really started self-scouting. I think there's so much information that's available now in terms of positional value, in terms of how to navigate the cap, in terms of just a bunch of different things that I think, and also, by the way, the fact that the Rams went and found a Puka Nacua, who really was undervalued in terms of the draft, and then you go back and you look at it and you say, was there something we should have seen? There's a lot of data there. And so one stat I'll put on your listeners' radar to look for when it comes to wide receivers when they're coming out of college: yards per route run. And then also in fantasy also, yards per route run is a relatively sticky stat in terms of being predictive, because it measures what you do with the opportunities that you are given. And Puka Nacua was boom, way off the charts in those types of stats, in ways that now you're how did they miss this? And another name to keep your eye on in this year's draft that checks those specific boxes, and then last week in Mobile also actually managed to check the physical boxes, is Tez Johnson from Oregon. He's an undersized wide receiver, looks a little bit like Tank Dell, but again, in those types of metrics, yards per route run, first downs per route run, he's much closer to Puka than the rest of the field is. And because he's undersized, everybody wanted to see if he could get separation and actually win against the high-end cornerbacks, and he did. So that's a name that, again, to what are you looking forward to? Have we caught up on this? Do we now know, he's small, but don't write him off because he's small? It's been such a traits-based league for so long. Are we reevaluating the way that we look at people?
Yeah, it makes it so, I guess, interesting in that the game evolves, and as the game evolves, players, and just, listening to you talk about metrics and being able, probability by the yards as the play develops. It's almost so much information sometimes that you wonder, do you just go back to, what do you eyes tell you?
Yes.
Can that guy play football or not? Which is why I think, back to the beginning of our conversation, Senior Bowl and stuff like that is so important. Seeing how a player can take a simple playbook and get to the end of the week. Can he lead a team? Can he do different things like
that?
There's
always context. And that's the thing at Senior Bowl that I talk to a lot of people who are former general managers, or just kind of asking around, what are you looking for here? And I was told by one, something that I think actually very much rings true for me. They're we can all get the tape. The tape gets sent to us. So if you're sitting there and you're really trying to scout the player and stuff, what I can get on the ground there that I can't get from watching the tape is watching the instructions that they're given by the coach, and how quickly they were able to implement that. And at Senior Bowl, by the way, that's a time when, we all talk about at this time of year with offensive linemen, this guy's played tackle his entire career, but is he a tackle in the NFL? Are we going to move him to guard, or are we going to move him to center? And so you've got guys who are playing way out of position all week long in Senior Bowl and getting their reps for the first time at different positions. And so if you are on the ground looking at them, you have that kind of context. You can go, hey, they just flipped him into center. He's never done this before. I talked to Harold Fannin Jr., who's a tight end prospect this year, out of Bowling Green. He said he took his first fullback snap since high school. So that type of context and looking at how quickly they're able to take a coaching note and turn that into production, or what type of leader they are. I was told by somebody there that center, you want somebody who can take control of the offensive line room. I wouldn't have necessarily thought that. I would have thought that would be your left tackle, because those are usually the high money guys. That's the positional priority. But they said center needs to be a guy who can walk into that room and that huddle and take it over. You want an alpha. You want somebody who's almost borderline cocky. These are personality things you're looking for on the field in Mobile. And so you can evaluate some of those intangibles that are certainly important.
Mm-hmm.
The data is important to tell us whether or not we're being tricked by our eyes. Or sometimes our biases, I think in the case of Aaron Rodgers, you go, well, he's a Hall of Fame quarterback. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
And over a certain period of time, sometimes the data does lie because sometimes it is about the offensive line or the wide receivers. There are definitely stories like Patrick Mahomes ranks in all of our advanced metrics like middle of the pack this year. We all know Patrick Mahomes is not middle of the pack, right? Like so, but you can look at the numbers and ask more questions.
Yeah.
So I think it always goes with something else. Hey, this guy's numbers are crazy. Should I go back and look at the tape? Patrick Mahomes' numbers are not good. Is there something there? Why? For me, the question is why? And then you can start to do a deep dive and answer the questions that have to do with the team.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about our center, Eric McCoy, and I'm like, he is a leader. He is great. He does command that room. He does help everybody. I'm like, is he a little cocky? I don't know. Does he have that? I don't.
It doesn't have to be cocky. I think if it's the right type of exactly. They said borderline cocky, by the way. Eric McCoy, I'm glad you brought his name up though. Number 1 in our run blocking metric, number 2 in pass blocking. Wow. And that's out of 40 plus players. Wow. Number 2 in pass block get off. Like he really popped for me when I ran the Saints numbers in here. You know who else did? Derek Carr.
Yeah, no.
Like the efficiency numbers for Derek Carr this year, you asked me what surprised me. The number of times Derek Carr's name was near the top of lists that I would populate for quarterbacks because I think people expect him to be around 15. Like in general, people's brains are like he's a 15 range quarterback, and this year he played really well. And I think we also saw a ton of examples of that. This was also the story of the year for me was and I've said this for years, but it confirmed this bias that quarterback play is so reliant on environment. Like with Sam Darnold is the biggest example.
Yeah.
Put him on an offense with a good offensive line, competent coaching, more than competent coaching. Put him in that type of environment and see what he can do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, with us, it was who was around Carr most of the season.
Yep.
And we went through 6 different starting offensive lines because of injuries, and then
all of the wide receivers
around.
It's so hard because fans don't want to hear that. And I get it. And sometimes even us in media covering it or whatever, but it's so hard when your offensive line's changing. When your number 1 receiver is there one day, he's gone the next day. You lose Eric McCoy in the third play, in the game against the Eagles. I mean,
no one wanted to hear that about Sam Darnold. I can't tell you the number of times that I, in the last few years, sort of meekly raised my hand and I was like, when he was in San Francisco, I was like, hey, like low-end comeback player of the year guy, like the odds are insane if you want to put your money on Sam Darnold because Brock Purdy was hurt.
Yeah.
So I was like, if Sam Darnold is under center in week 1 with that team last year in San Francisco, he's going to do well.
Yeah.
And then do you take him off the field? And so but the number of times I brought that up and people went, are you joking me? And I was like, you guys watch, he's never been on a good team. And so I never would have predicted that he would have the season he had this year. I didn't think he was going to be that good. Mm-hmm. But where I was not comfortable was saying he's not good enough. I was like, we don't know that. Yeah. We've never had that evidence. But to your point, people do not want to hear that. People just want, like, give me somebody that's elite. Give me somebody that's good. You can win without that. You just have to build the right team around them to maximize. You need somebody who can do the things that is good enough, frankly.
Yeah. Well, good enough. Let's just kind of wrap it up and bring it to here where we are at the Super Bowl because you have 2 teams that are extremely coached well. You got playmakers everywhere. Last time these 2 teams met in the Super Bowl, the losing quarterback at half was probably the odds-on favorite to win the MVP, right? Yeah. At that time going in there. They've added Saquon, who we've talked about a little bit here as well. I'm with you. I look at the Chiefs, I'm like, how many jerseys are selling other than Mahomes and Kelsey for good reason? Yeah. But they're somehow good, and they just know how to win. So when you look at this matchup, what are we seeing on Sunday? Right?
This is so I've yet to settle because I'm like, I know that everyone that I talk to today is going to go, give us your prediction and like a score. And I haven't settled on it yet. Like, I feel like, and I don't know if you guys feel this way when you're not watching the Saints, like sometimes I don't know what I've really settled on until like the game has started, and then I realize I have a rooting interest. You know, I'm like, oh, I've been rooting on several plays for this team, you know, and that happens to me quite frequently. Right. I have no idea who I want to win or who I think is going to win. Like, it's a very head versus gut situation for me. My head, this Eagles roster, I think, is the best roster in the NFL, top to bottom. I mean, if you look at a depth chart for them, it's like, good luck finding a hole. They are all so stinking good everywhere. That's not true for the Chiefs. But I think what the Chiefs have and where they have an edge is the coaching staff, just top to bottom. I mean, Spags, what he did against the Bills, pulling out plays that he hadn't ran all year long. Patrick Mahomes has been scrambling more during the playoffs. The things that they're able to do from a coaching standpoint in a game that you're expecting to be close, I think that gives you an edge. It feels very inexplicable that the Chiefs would win this. And also, oh my God, if they win this one, they're never losing again. Right? Like this year with this team, if they pull off a three-peat with this roster that nobody can even really identify what's special about it, so much so that they're talking about the refs handing it to them on a weekly basis.
Oh my gosh,
That's a good point, yeah.
But I kind of think they might, but I can't actually back that up with anything, right? Because like Saquon, you got to go all the way up to 125 yards to get plus money on Saquon in the Super Bowl.
125.
125 to get plus money. That's wild.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And he's probably going to do it. I mean, that's 100% reasonable the way that especially the Chiefs' run defense has been lately. So
I'm with you. I think the Eagles squad is stacked, but it's just so hard to count out the Chiefs and their coaching staff and Patrick Mahomes. It's just, I don't know. I'm just hoping for a really good fun.
I think you're going to get that.
Because growing up in New Orleans, obviously when the Saints were in the West, you might have heard of the 49ers in the 80s. You know everybody on that team, you know? I mean, from Craig to the receivers to obviously Montana. But you're right. It's like and even to an extent when you had the dynasty conversation with the Patriots, it was always 1 or 2. But where do you put, I guess, the Chiefs if they do win 3 in a row?
Yeah. I mean,
it's obviously history making.
Right. They're currently the now dynasty. Yeah. Right. So at the very least, you've got the Patriots dynasty, and then you have the Chiefs dynasty, and then they'll have to win a few more to be in the same conversation of like, are they better? I mean, the bar was set so high in terms of Super Bowl rings.
Ridiculous, right.
So, but honestly, and then again, to my point, if he wins his third now, like if how many are they going to win? He's been in the AFC Championship every year. Mm-hmm. At the beginning of the year, and I'm actually very much not into betting, but I'm like, and this is probably why I say this, people who are bettors are like, never take a future on a Super Bowl winner and put your money in that. But every year for the last few years, I've looked at the Chiefs and they're like 6-1 to win the Super Bowl. I'm like, they're going to be there. So even though that's like the worst odds out of everyone else, like it's still 6-1 and they're going to be there. So if you could lock that up, I'm like, it's like, it's easy money.
Yeah.
And then you at least have a 50-50 shot in the final week of the season. Like, okay.
Right.
So it's wild what they've been able to put together. As long as Andy Reid is there, I'll tell you what could throw it for a loop, though, if somebody hires Spags as a head coach.
Yeah.
If for no other reason than to take him away from the Chiefs. And I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, there's been talk about, like, the Bills should just hire Spags. Mm-hmm. Like, so that you then don't go up against him. And now you've cleared a path a little bit for your offensively driven opponent, team. Right. But somebody else that's desperate for a coach, why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they?
You bring up a lot of good points. It's been fascinating talking to you about a lot of the analytics, your thoughts on the development of these players and the league and what is important now and what people are looking at. It's going to be a fun offseason. There is so much coming up. And this week alone, it's going to be fun, but it never stops anymore. NFL is a year-round
It really
12
is.
months, it really is.
Show.
There's like a 4-week period in like June to July where you can really kind of tap out. Yeah. Everything else, it's nope. It's a full year-long thing.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for stopping by and joining us. This was an awesome way to kick off the week.
Yeah. Yay. For Appreciate me, too. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
We're excited to be joined by Saints kicker Blake Grupe here. It is a big week, lots going on in New Orleans. How are you doing, and how are you involved?
Yeah, I'm doing great. It's a quick start to the week and busy. I've never been in anything around like this, but this is really cool. I guess I have some stuff lined up here tomorrow, and I have some guys that are helping me with everything this week, and I pretty much told them, anything you can find this week, let's get on it.
Yeah.
And I am shocked about how much stuff I have. I just being a kicker, just being me, we got a busy week ahead, so I'm excited to see what we can do.
I know you're about to jet to an event here shortly. So what are you doing?
Yeah, over there in Hall I believe we got the wheelchair All-Star game, football game. So I think there's 14 different teams from all across the country, and they all sent a veteran that's part of their wheelchair football team and they have an All-Star game in there. So I'm doing the coin toss. So little stuff from coin toss to interviews to golf tournaments. We have all kinds of stuff this week, so I'm excited.
Yeah, it's really fun to be in a round event like this, but I'm sure as a player you want to be a part of it on the other side. So you think about the future and what that looks like for you. Like, what are some of your goals and your plans?
Yeah, it's pretty much after this week is when I'm really starting to get into off-season training, and I've been lifting a little bit, but now we can't use our facility this week due to
there's another team there, I think.
The Eagles are using it, yeah. So I got another place we're getting some work in this week, but it'll ramp up start next week, and I'm excited. I didn't want to take a break at all. I felt like I had a really good year, and then I was hitting the ball really well to the whole season, and so I didn't really want to stop. So I'm itching to get back in there and just continue to improve on what I was able to do this year.
Got to ask you the obvious Super Bowl question here, right? Growing up, or even maybe now, do you ever daydream Super Bowl game-winning kick, right? Is it 3 seconds, 2 seconons?
It don't matter how many seconds as long as we get a chance.
In all honesty, have you ever thought about it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's what we sign up to do, to be put in those situations. That's what you live for, I guess, as a kicker. And I was actually talking to Harrison Butker earlier, or at the end of last week, and he was asking me for a little bit of a scouting report on the turf and everything about the Superdome. And I pretty much told him, because he's a mad scientist when it comes to everything, but he was asking about the turf, and I told him in the Superdome, you hit it straight, it's going to go straight. You don't have to worry about the elements obviously being in the dome. So he's a great kicker, and I'm excited to see what those guys can do. Yeah,
because they're always around this time of the year. We always see the game-winning kick against the Vikings to send the Saints to the Super Bowl in it.
Yep.
And
every year.
I always love the slow-mo videos when you just see all the eyes, the coach just
flickers in the crowd, everything. I know.
To it, man.
Yeah, Garrett's awesome. I think he's actually playing in there's a Gleason golf tournament on Thursday, and all the obviously proceeds and stuff are going to ALS, and so that's a really awesome tournament that Tommy Capella is putting on with the Gleason Foundation. I believe Hartley, Lutz is coming back, Morstead, a bunch of people. It's almost like every specialist that's played for the Saints in the last couple of years is in it. I think Sean Payton. There's a lot of people that are coming back and playing in it, and it's going to be a good event.
Yeah. What is it about specialists? You guys just have some time on your hands?
I mean,
and you
we
can be
do.
golfers?
I don't play in the season, I'll tell you that. But I don't know. We all enjoy playing, whether it's playing with Zach or Hayball. And being down in New Orleans, it's a lot warmer than it is in a lot of other places in the country across this time of year. So a lot of courses around here, a lot of golf to be played, but the work has to come first, I guess.
Yeah. For you, how is this time, the transition between the unknown of who the next coach is going to be and then adjusting to when that starts to take place and unfold and kind of figuring out what's next for the Saints?
Yeah, for sure. A lot of people have asked me if I know anything, and I really don't. Yeah. I'm excited to I guess get another opportunity. You'd never take anything for granted, but for somebody else to come in, whoever that may be, I know the guys are going to be really eager to work. Go with whatever changes they may make, or little tweaks to how we do things. So really curious to see how that comes in, when it comes in. But all I know is I'm ready for another opportunity with somebody else to prove myself and continue on this little journey we're on.
All right, Blake, thank you so much. I know you got a lot going on, so I appreciate you giving us a little time, letting us know what's going on for you this week, and I'm sure we'll see you around.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much.
The flipping?
No, I don't. You guys got a quarter? I might need one.
All right, that was fun, our conversation with Saints kicker Blake Grupe and Lindsay Rhodes. Again, I'm still kind of baffled by some of those analytics and numbers on there. She kept looking at the laptop. I'm like, I want to see what that looks like. Is it like the Matrix?
I would not understand it if I got to look at it.
Just numbers keep moving up and down and everything. Be kind of interesting. And that was cool to hear Blake talk about some of the things that are going on that he's going to be a part of. The specialist extravaganza. Just a specialist here, specialist there, specialist everywhere.
I think it's so cool that he wanted to be a part of it. He's like, let me know. I want to be around. I want to be here in the community, and he's doing a bunch of different events, raising money in different places. So I think that's awesome that he has really thrown himself into here. I think he's been great for the Saints, and you can tell how much he loves being here in the city.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, it's just Monday. That's in the books, and we're going to be here all week through Friday. So tune in to us, and we'll have some fun conversations. Got some great guests lined up later in the week here as well, so I think you'll enjoy it, right?
Absolutely. We got a lot going on, a lot coming up. So just stay tuned, whether it is here, listening to the podcast, or on NewOrleansSaints.com. A ton of content coming out, so you guys don't want to miss it.
And don't forget, we saw John DeShazer walking around here. I don't know if Todd's going to miss him over there in Denver or not, but he's also here doing some Super Bowl coverage. So NewOrleansSaints.com, you'll see some of his stuff. I know he was at the kickoff press conference.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. We had such a discussion whether it was the breakfast kickoff.
No, the breakfast is on Saturday.
Exactly.
That's where Cam Jordan is going to get honored.
That's true.
His Bart Starr Award winner there. So, I mean, I'm sure you will see Cam Jordan quite often.
By the way, does he know everybody at the facility? I have noticed now that I get to eat with you guys and stuff. We
finally let Gus sit at our table.
Yeah, finally. He knows everyone. Doesn't he? I mean,
yes.
Everyone.
But that's what's really cool about
by
Cam.
Every table, he talks to everybody.
He will
really
sit down at a table with the sales team or game experience and just like, hey guys, tell me about yourself. Yeah. What do you do here? Because he really he cares, and he understands that everybody plays a role in the success of this team, and he appreciates it.
He's strategic, too. I noticed he didn't go to the hot section until last because he's going to get stopped. He starts on the right, and by the time he comes back around to the left where the hot food is, that's probably he's already seen the room. But the point we're trying to make, though, is it's so deserving, and I know it's a great honor for him, especially to have it here in the city. Yeah, absolutely. I know he is going to be a hot commodity around town this week, so you'll be able to see him in a lot of places. All right, well, we will see you the rest of the week. Again, stay with us over on NewOrleansSaints.com.
You've been listening to a special edition of the New Orleans Saints podcast from Super Bowl 59's Radio Row in downtown New Orleans. For more complete coverage from John DeShazer, be sure to visit NewOrleansSaints.com.